The television sitcom One Day at a Time premiered on CBS December 16, 1975. The show starred Bonnie Franklin playing a divorced mother raising her teenage daughters, played by Mackenzie Phillips and Valerie Bertinelli. Divorced mother Ann Romano moves herself and her teenage daughters, the rebellious Julie and the wisecracking Barbara, from their home in Logansport, Indiana, to Indianapolis. Ann frequently struggles with trying to maintain her role as a mother, yet also affording her daughters the freedom that she never had as a young woman. Dwayne Snyder, the building superintendent, usually provides unwanted advice to his tenants, especially the mother Ann. Ann ends up dating a divorce lawyer, David Kane, and they become engaged. But on their wedding day, David says he wants kids, but Ann doesn't, so they call off the wedding. The show then focuses on Ann's dilemmas as a single mother and a career woman, as well as the pains that the girls experience growing up. And Snyder becomes more of a welcome part of the family. Julie and Barbara eventually graduate from high school and head into the working world. Later in the series run, Julie gives birth to a daughter, Little Annie, and Barbara ends up marrying a dental student, Mark Royer. Ann eventually decides to take a job in London, leaving her daughters in Indianapolis to raise their own families. In the season finale, Snyder also leaves town. He moves to Florida to take care of his niece and nephew. Now, this series was originally titled All About Us, and it was about a single divorced mother raising her daughter. It was written by Whitney Blake and was based on her true life experiences raising her daughter, Meredith Baxter. She presented the series idea to all of the networks back in the 60s, but no one bought it. No one thought it was any good. Initially, she wanted her and her daughter to play the title roles. By the time CBS came along and Norman Lear optioned it, she was too old to play this part. And ironically, by the time the show made it to the air, Meredith Baxter, her daughter, landed a role on another hit family TV show. And that was the critically acclaimed Aaron Spelling drama, Family. Valerie Bertinelli claimed at one time that Mackenzie Phillips was very mean to her during the first season of the show. Eventually, the two became very close. And Bertinelli was one of the few people in Hollywood who stood by her after her shocking tell-all book came out, detailing incest and sexual abuse that she had experienced. By the 1979-80 season, Mackenzie Phillips was dealing with drug addiction, and she ended up entering rehab in 1980. Her character, Julie, married Max, and they end up moving to Houston. In the 7th season, 81 and 82, she returned as a guest for a 2-part episode where Julie and Max deal with marital problems. In the 9th and final season, 83 and 84, Phillips collapsed on the set. The producers asked her to give a urine test to see if she was under the influence of drugs. She ended up telling the producers that they didn't even need to bother. She was then quietly fired, and Julie was permanently written out of the show. Bonnie Franklin, the main star of the show, nearly quit after 15 episodes because she just wasn't pleased with the show's direction. She agreed to stay after being allowed to have more creative input into the series. Now, the character of Jenny was played by 2 actresses. One when they filmed the pilot, and that was played by Marcia Rod. She was eventually taken out of the pilot because it was deemed that she just wasn't necessary and that she drew attention away from Bonnie Franklin. The character was brought back, though, and played by Mary Louise Wilson during the 1976-77 season. This was done to fill a void that was left by the departure of Richard Masur and his character David Kane. She eventually vanishes again by the end of the season because of the reported conflicts between Wilson and Bonnie Franklin. Bonnie Franklin felt like she was getting upstaged by this actress and was having none of it. Now, if you listen to the two actors that ended up leaving the show, Richard Masur and Mary Louise Wilson, they publicly say that they quit the show and that they weren't fired. Both of them were Norman Lear alums from other shows, and they state that their concern was the show's quality, that it wasn't up to All in the Family standards. The behind-the-scenes gossip is that Bonnie Franklin demanded the firing and that she wanted the character eliminated because it was robbing her character of her status as a strong single woman. The character that Mary Louise Wilson played, she states that she begged to be written off the show. But the behind-the-scenes reports indicated that Franklin was complaining that she was stealing her thunder, and she demanded that she be written off of it. Probably the truth to both of these characters leaving is somewhere in between, but you can rest assured that they were asked to leave the show. The two girls on the show, Valerie Bertinelli and Mackenzie Phillips, were really connected to three of the most popular and important musical legacies in rock and roll history: the Mamas and the Papas, the Beach Boys, and Van Halen. Phillips was the daughter of John Phillips, the founder and lead singer of the Mamas and the Papas. John Phillips was best friends with Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys, and their daughters would perform in a hit group together, Wilson Phillips. Also, Valerie Bertinelli married Eddie Van Halen while she was on the TV show One Day at a Time. If you add to this, Shelley Fabares, who played Ann Romano's rival on the show, also had a Billboard Hot 100 hit in the early 60s called Johnny Angel. This show is just packed with ties to musical talent. Originally, there were plans to spin Snyder off into a show of his own after the series went off the air, but those plans never came true. One of the spin-off characters would have been Snyder's nephew, played by Corey Feldman, in the final episode. Ironically, Mackenzie Phillips and Corey Feldman would be acquainted, and they would actually become close in the years to come, because they were recovering child stars who had been eaten up by Hollywood, and both had turned to drugs in the process, later becoming really involved in the Hollywood Alcoholics Anonymous programs, trying to break their addiction. It's also ironic that Valerie Bertinelli admits to dabbling in drugs during this period, although with her it never got out of control like it did with Corey and Mackenzie. For the entire run of the show, the series was taped in Hollywood before a studio audience. Shortly before its premiere, the series began taping at Metro Media Square, where it remained until 1982. From 1982 to 84, the series was taped at Universal Studios. The theme song, which will surely catch your ear every time you hear it, is called This Is It, and it was composed by songwriter Jeff Barry and his wife Nancy Barry. The opening credits were originally seen over a film sequence showing Anne, Julie, and Barbara excitedly moving into their new home. It's always fun to see this show in syndication and drift back into the past. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.